Good morning, members. We have already formed a quorum, and we have already passed 8:30. We have 5 items on the agenda today, proposals made by the administration, which have all been listed in the agenda last time, and they have not been scrutinized yet. And I'd like to remind members that if members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest on the items under discussion today, please do declare the nature of that interest before you speak under Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure. I'd like to draw members' attention to Rule 84 of the Rules of Procedure with regard to voting where there is a direct pecuniary interest. And last time we already started the discussion, and that had item 1, Head 705 Civil Engineering, paper number PWSC 50, 769CL, Pilot Study on Underground Space Development in Selected Strategic Urban Areas. I don't think I need to introduce the public officers in attendance because we already started the discussion last time, so please indicate if you'd like to ask questions. First, Dr. Kwai Chung. Thank you, Chairman. With regard to the pilot study, we are not against that, but then there are a couple of points that I'd like to clarify with the administration, because whether it's the FC or the PWSC in the past, very often after our discussion, after the certain study has been approved, it would be assumed that the item would be supported by the committee itself. I don't want this to happen again, because we all understand that for the 4 selected locations, yes, they are the most densely populated areas and they are the prime sites, but then there are often traffic problems and planning issues that have not yet been resolved. And if we just bulldoze it through this committee, that's not going to help. And what I'm most concerned about is the impact on the residents. And we haven't really gone to the point about funding for such major projects. So I think there are still many outstanding issues to be resolved. That's why I like to make it clear at the outset. And I like to put it to the administration, if we approve this study, then to put it more bluntly, so once we got ourselves wet, does it mean that in the future we will have no alternative but to support it? And last time there were we weren't given many details, and the administration didn't seem to have any specific direction for this. But then we have no idea as to why these 4 locations have been chosen, and I'd like to know more about this. And in fact, there are many considerations that have not been set out here. And thirdly, I'd also like to have an idea as to any estimate on the future costs for the development. If you are going to develop the underground space, given the tremendous difficulties, so according to your estimate with regard to the cost per hectare, have you done any estimates? And if you are able to give us further details with regard to the 4 locations, if you were to go ahead with the development, then how much cost will be needed? Well, before you answer the question, I'd like to remind members that last time on the 28th of February, a supplementary paper was submitted by the administration, paper number PWSC 01, and that was already passed on to members on the 9th of March. So, Director, can you answer the question? Yes, thank you, Dr. Kwok, for your question. There were 3 questions. First, with regard to the pilot study, would that involve the decision of going ahead with certain projects and so on? I'd like to stress that this is a very advanced study, and we have chosen the 4 locations, and I'd like to explain why we have chosen the 4 locations. We'd like to look into the possibility of developing further works projects in the future. So this is very much a preliminary study, and we haven't got any specific idea as to when and where the work will start. So this is an initial study, and we'd like to identify works projects that can be undertaken, and also the procedures for involvement, and we will definitely have to come back to this council to explain in detail as to why we have chosen the site, and also the cost implications, and also the impact on the neighborhood. And I understand that Dr. Kwok is also concerned that if we were to go ahead with the project, whether the residents will be affected. So in terms of the environment and also the traffic implications and also the engineering aspects, so we will have to look into the implications. The reason why we have chosen the 4 locations, I've explained that last time, but then let me repeat that again. In fact, we have done some internal study and we have gone to look into the site. Yes, please continue. For the 4 locations, as we said, they are all located in the metro area. They are relatively densely populated, and also if you look at the people flow and also the traffic flow is quite busy. That's why we'd like to see if there is any underground space available so that there can be better accessibility and connectivity for both people and vehicles. And also in the more densely populated areas, there would be slim chance that we'll be able to identify further space. That's why we stand a better chance if we try to look underground. That's why we have chosen the 4 sites, and there is also a lot of infrastructure, and also there might be more public open space available in nearby, for example, parks and so on. So there is a better chance for us to develop the underground space beneath those facilities. And we haven't got any detailed study. If indeed we were to develop those areas, how much cost would be involved, because in the end we have to decide on what projects we are to undertake, and also how deep we're going to dig into the ground. And then on previous studies, many of them were undertaken many years ago. For example, the MTR station in Quarry Bay, that might be a reference point, but then as to whether or not it's of high reference value, we are not sure. That's why we have to take the first step. We have to undertake the pilot study, and in the process we will do some initial financial assessment, and then in the process we might be able to get hold of more information. Thank you. Next, Mr. Kwai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. If Hong Kong people have ever traveled to Japan for work or for sightseeing, then you would have a chance to see how such underground space has been made use of. And I need to explain that in detail, because if you've been to Tokyo, Osaka, or other Japanese cities, they have a lot of underground streets. And many Hong Kong people often frequent those places. And I'd like to cite another example. And I'm sure many Hong Kong people would have had such experience before. That's in Sapporo, and if you've been to Sapporo, and underneath one of the trunk roads, that's the Otsuro Park. So, at grade there are these trunk roads, but then underneath we have this very spacious underground space, which is connected to a lot of commercial buildings nearby. And it has also become a very good underground open space, and that has also generated a lot of business opportunities, and there are many shop premises. And Hong Kong people would also go to Hokkaido as one of the most popular tourist attractions. But then in Sapporo, and it's very cold in winter, but then for the underground space, it's a very comfortable place to go to, so that you'd be able to stay away from the cold winter at grade. And then underground is a very good access. And on both sides of the road, there are pedestrian walkways, and there would be lifts bringing people down from the grade level. And they can also be connected to buildings, and also the basements, where you can gain access through the basements of different commercial buildings, and you can also be connected to the JR or the railway system. So I think it's very good, and therefore I would strongly support that we should undertake such studies. And of course, whether or not it's feasible is still early days to say. And if we are already able to come to any conclusion, of course, there is no need for us to undertake this pilot study. The reason why we have to undertake this study, that's to allow us to decide whether or not the further developments would be feasible. That's why some members are concerned that after the pilot study has been undertaken, it means that we have to give the green light for the further development. I think to be more scientific, that would not have been the premise. So I think it's something that is worth undertaking. But I've also noticed that the scope of the study would also include areas where there are public utilities, for example, parks might be included, and the land title might be involved, and many of the buildings might be private buildings. And when it comes to ownership, in the past we did touch on that, but then it's not clear as to whether or not we got the answers already. So I hope to give some time to the officials to explain to us the current status with regard to land ownership. Yes, Mr. Han? On land ownership, well, in the study, we will also be looking into that. And of course, one of the characteristics in Hong Kong is that if there is a piece of land, basically, the owner will own it towards the very deep part of the underground.
Development in private lots would involve land resumption. But can the ownership be split underground or separated? We can consider that. And as regards connection to private developments, the study will also cover the issue of ownership. Ms. Sit Ho. Thank you, Chairman. This subject was put to LegCo for discussion in the past. We asked about the situation in Causeway Bay and Happy Valley, given that the traffic is already very congestion and is also a residential commercial area. Development of underground space would draw more people to an already heavily congested area, and there must be excellent traffic support. Now, the MTR is the only means of public transport to carry people there, but is there still room for further development because the MTR system is so saturated? According to our secretariat, the number of persons accommodated per square meter is really higher than the international standard, which is 6 per square meter. Of course, the administration would say that without a study, they cannot give us a definite answer. What about choosing another location for development of suburban area? How does it compare with developing underground space in the urban areas? Because when the XRL project was discussed, civic organizations talked about suburban areas. They are of the view that in the NT and other parts of the territory, there is room for development of commercial centers as well. There is no need to draw more crowd to the already congested areas. And in Old Wan Chai area, Causeway Bay, there are many occupants. Many of the buildings are not yet redeveloped. The height is not too much. Development of underground space may affect their development potential in the future. I think even without spending $70 million, you can anticipate such difficulties. And at Caroline Hill Road and Tung Yuen Road, we have many schools and hospitals. Please do not touch the underground space of this area. I think you should have some preliminary criteria for excluding some areas right from the beginning. Do you have such criteria for us? Mr. Wai? Now, Mr. Ho is correct in saying that these are densely populated areas. Both pedestrian and vehicular traffic is heavy. Development of underground space will help to divert people. But as mentioned by Mr. Low, and then in early November, late October, went to Paris for a duty visit. It was right in the middle of Paris, near the Louvre. That is the most densely populated site in Paris. They have got a 5-level underground space. For the last few levels, they are covered by 8 subway lines of Paris, and there is one level which is a pedestrian precinct with shops. Every day, 750,000 people go through that area, and 150,000 shoppers go through the underground streets. They are talking about an expansion so as to divert people. So our idea is to divert people using underground space in these very congested areas. Mr. Ho asked whether certain locations, private buildings, would be affected. That in my reply to Mr. Low, we said that we know for sure lots owned by the government and also lots owned by the private or by the public. When private ownership is involved, we will deal with it very cautiously. What about areas with hospitals and schools? Can you for sure delete them, exclude them from your study? Well, the scope of the study is rather rough. As I said, in these areas, traffic, vehicular and pedestrian traffic is heavy. For underground space, we know which area belongs to the government. We will not deliberately touch on areas where there are controversial views. Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Regarding the administration supplementary information paper, i.e. PWSC 125/1415-01, I welcome the supplementary information paper from the administration. It has responded to my questions asked in the first round of discussion. 4 strategic areas are involved, 3 of which are on Hong Kong Island, i.e. Causeway Bay, Happy Valley, and Admiralty Wan Chai. Even more than 2 decades ago, when the former Urban Council considered the development of the Central Library, I already urged the administration to do a similar study. It's 20 years after, Chairman. 20 years is a long period of time. If the study was done back then we don't have to wait until now when Causeway Bay and Wan Chai are so highly developed and built. So we have lost 20 years. But of course, better late than never. Even if we do the study now, we don't know how many decades we have to wait before we can see some results of the study. All right. 3 of the 4 strategic locations are on Hong Kong Island. The study is long overdue, and the area under study is very, very small. It is not forward-looking enough. Still, it is better to do this study. As an elected member from Hong Kong Island, I strongly support this study. I also hope that the study can start as soon as possible. I hope that after the administration has completed this study covering these 4 areas, can it be more forward-looking and cover other areas where conditions are ripe. Take Yunnan as an example. The main road, as we all know, it is difficult to have more development. It is so overcrowded. Of course, I will not be specific about this, but you should have started a study long ago. Now there is a conflict between traffic, vehicular and pedestrian traffic, but now there is no room for further development. Now, if you go to Causeway Bay, Crescent, the area there, you can see that when people are waiting, when people are crossing the road at green phase, people are so crowded just outside Sogo. So I urge this study to be started as soon as possible so that we can relieve the traffic congestion in Causeway Bay. This is particularly the case when there is a public rally or a public gathering. Just expression of my views. I do not need any reply from the administration. Mr. Chen Chi-chun. Regarding, in the supplementary paper, they have clearly marked the streets covered by that red boundary. I'd like to know whether what is the rationale behind drawing the boundaries as they are now. If you have time, you can explain to us. But why am I so concerned about this? Because members have quoted many successful examples in places like Japan, Tokyo, Osaka, and Taiwan. Well, the purpose is to, for instance, Chonghao East Road and Xinsheng Road and Fuxing Road, you can walk through all these streets. It takes you an hour, and it's just the same for Tokyo and Osaka. My question when looking at this plan is whether there is any through passage between Wan Chai and Causeway Bay, because for Causeway Bay, the west boundary is at Marsh Road and Wan Chai Fleming Road. What about Tonnichi Road in between? Why are the two not connected? Can you explain the rationale behind, if there is any? Well, we followed the district boundaries in the main. As I said, we consider whether there's any sizable public space available for underground development. But I get Mr. Chen's point. These two districts are so close, and they are also very congested. Is there any possibility of linking the two districts underground? Even with the boundaries here, we don't rule this possibility, and in future the area may go a little bit beyond the boundaries here. So our objective is very clear. We want to relieve congestion at grade, and if there is any scope for linking up these areas underground in Causeway Bay and Wan Chai, will certainly do so. Of course, I know that the boundaries here are not cast in iron, but for Tonnichi Road and Stewart Road, because for Wan Chai you stopped at Fleming Road and Causeway Bay you stop at Marsh Road, and there is a gap between the two areas. Is there any reason for this gap? Ms. Zhang, can you please explain why there is a gap between the two areas? As the director said, these areas are chosen because they are traditional commercial areas in Hong Kong, and they are densely populated with little room for further development above ground. And yet, there are playgrounds and parks with more potential of underground space development. Or even though we've chosen these areas, that doesn't mean that we're not going to consider accessibility and connectivity of other places. You can see that Wan Chai and Causeway Bay here are just next to one another. The study will consider connectivity of the two areas. My question was not answered. She talked about the big principles. I am asking, why aren't we having two big squares there? The area covering Wan Chai is T-shaped, and for Causeway Bay, it doesn't have a Territorial Road. Can you tell us the reason behind this? Assistant Director of Planning. The bigger the scope of the study area, the higher the cost and scale. So we wanted to confine the study to areas with a bigger potential of underground space development. However, the area covering Marsh Road and Fleming Road, it can be covered in this study. I think Mr. Chen is asking whether you have considered moving the pedestrian footbridge network in Central to underground. Now, at least this is my understanding of Mr. Chen's question.
But of course, I cannot answer on behalf of the public officers. But then this line of thought can feature in your consideration about this strategic study, because for Territorial Road and also Fleming Road, well, of course, I cannot answer on your behalf, but then I can only try to read into the question raised by Mr. Raymond Chen. So can I give you another chance to speak? Yes, Chairman, of course, what you said was the main direction of my question, but then the reason why this has not been included in the boundary of this. Just now, the Assistant Director said that that could also be looked into, but then in other words, that's quite arbitrary. In other words, you can also broaden the scope of your study when you do it. All right. He has now highlighted the main point about his question. So can you try and answer again? Well, the main reason why we have chosen these sites, well, one of the important considerations is to identify the suitable sites for further development. And if you look at the area beneath the T-shaped boundary, in fact, there is a park, and therefore there is a chance that we might be able to identify more space. But then outside of this, the streets would be pretty narrow, and I do not rule the possibility that we might be able to cover that in the study. But then initially, at first glance, if you look at those locations, there might be some difficulties. But then we can't be sure. But then, as I said, in a study, if there is a chance for us to do it, we would not be missing the opportunity. We will try our best to see what can be done about it. Next, Ms. Sit Ho, Chairman, I'd just like to get more information, because whether or not this item is approved, I hope the administration can provide additional information to me. Number one, Mr. Ho did not answer my question, in the sense that in undertaking this underground space study, in conjunction with some other areas for the development of the submetro area. So what are the justifications for choosing these sites? If you were to develop a submetropolitan area in other areas, then in terms of energy consumption, that would be rather difficult, because if we'd like to save energy, we don't want to make use of nuclear energy. But then if you're going to build 4 to 5 stories deep down, then what about the energy consumption implications? You will have to tell us. For every square meter of underground space to be developed, how much energy will have to be used in order to support the ventilation needs and so on. I need to know more about this, or else after all, the administration might say that we have to introduce nuclear energy, or else we won't be able to sustain it. Then I think we'd better make things clear right now. And also with regard to cross-boundary traffic's impact, to what extent would it be affected? You don't need to argue, because we believe that for the underground shopping space is for the purpose of developing tourism. But then it doesn't mean that so long as you can make it here, it will be okay. What about cross-boundary traffic? Because last year, how many visitors have we received? How many people have come in to stay and so on? So the whole impact would be distributed to other districts as well. It's not just confined to these locations. So can I ask this? Whatever we are going to do, whether we are able to identify further development space, we have to do it to enable Hong Kong people to have more living space. That's the primary objective. So with the undertaking of such pilot studies, I hope that the administration would give this undertaking. That is, we are going to impose a quota on the tourist visa to be issued, or else we simply will not be able to support the number of visitors streaming into Hong Kong. Well, my understanding of Ms. Sito's question is that she'd like to get more information. But then concerning Ms. Ho's question, do you have anything to say in response concerning energy consumption and also the amount of consumption per square meter? It's difficult for me to give you a quantified estimate. But then if you look at the existing underground development, well, I do have some figures, but then it's hard to compare that with future development, because it's too early for us to say how the underground space is going to be developed in the future. There are different possibilities, as I said it last time, so I'm not going to repeat that now. With regard to tourists coming to Hong Kong, I don't think that has a lot to do with this, and I've already submitted supplementary information to members. Well, in Hong Kong, we are short of land for different developments. For example, in terms of commercial space, when compared to the GDP development over the years, we are lagging behind. I still have to ask this supplementary question. That is precisely as he said, in terms of the growth in commercial space, it's only 16% during the past decade or so, and therefore is lagging behind our GDP growth. That's why I cannot but suspect that you're developing this for tourism purposes. And also the fact that you've chosen these metropolitan areas where these are mainly shopping centers, but then visitors would not just be coming to these locations. They would need accommodation. They would also have to cross the boundary at the border checkpoint. So you cannot just look at the traffic implication in these locations. You will also have to look at other areas. I think Ms. Ho has expressed her concerns, and that would also be recorded in the minutes. And we'll take it up at other relevant panels. Mr. Hon, you have nothing to add? No, nothing. Next, Kenneth Chan. Dr. Kenneth Chan. The mic will be turned on. Just now, members asked about the underground space. What's the purpose of developing it? I think common sense would tell us that in the core metropolitan shopping district, in developing the space, of course, that's for commercial purposes. Because there are many commercial buildings, they have basements in these locations, whether it's underground car park or shopping facilities. Recently, Times Square has this basement, and initially is for a substation for the Hong Kong tram, but then Tram Square has told Hong Kong Tram that they're not going to lease the land to them anymore, and therefore they have to go to a turnaround in Causeway Bay for the redevelopment of the substation. And of course, the reason why Times Square has terminated the tenancy agreement, that's because it would like to develop it for commercial or shopping purposes. And of course, well, instead of enjoying the blue sky and also the crispy air, all right, you will have to go underground in order to enjoy yourselves. So it's like telling people to go underground for accommodation instead of going above ground. I think our understanding of this is that you're going to develop the site for commercial purposes. But then there are a couple of points that I'd like to make it clear to the director. Number one, in the end, there might be a tug of war for space or scrambling for space by different parties, because well, recently I've also discussed this with some people about energy consumption implications and so on. Therefore, you will have to consider where you're going to place the ventilation shafts and so on. So in the end, you would be encroaching upon the public space, which is very rare. For example, you also refer to Victoria Park. All right, Victoria Park belongs to us, and then you can develop the underground space. But then when you develop commercial grounds underground, you might be encroaching upon the public space above. For example, if you were to build this access road in Victoria Park, you have to sever part of it, and some 2,000 trees will have to be felled. So you are going to gain something, but then at the same time you're going to lose something. So please do not mislead us into believing that you will only have gains without the losses. So when the report is out, you will have to make it clear as to what we are going to gain through the study, as to how much underground space we are going to gain, but then in the end, what we are going to lose. And also, we must not give people the impression that that's for the purpose of transferring benefit, because for the commercial buildings through the study, they're going to connect themselves up, so that in the end you're helping the commercial buildings in developing their underground city. So who is going to benefit? Who is going to lose? So the administration will have to face this issue. I'm not going to challenge the technical issues or the scientific basis and so on. In the end, it's a political tug of war. So I think this is a scrambling for space by different parties and stakeholders. So please do not pretend that nobody is concerned or nobody can be bothered. So I like to say this at the very beginning. That is, when you discuss this report with the contractors, you will have to set out the principles and also the values, so that you would not just be looking at the use of the underground space. You would also have to look at the scrambling for space by different stakeholders. Yes, thank you, Dr. Chen. We understand these concerns. In our objective, as set out in the paper, there are different purposes. Of course, we would like to develop the underground space, but then indeed we would also like to make sure that there would be better connectivity underground, so that we will be able to enhance the environment above ground. And if there are facilities, whether they are existing or new ones, we will be able to incorporate them underground. Mr. Wu Chi-wei. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to gather further information from the administration. If you look at the scope of the study, many commercial buildings have already made use of their underground space, and very often, as they pass through the rail track of the MTRCL, there would also be a lot of constraints. So can you provide us with the technical information that is for the underground space that has been used already, and also the constrained areas? For example, we have already got the MTR station on both sides, so that would also limit the area that can be developed. So can you provide the information to us? And also, in undertaking this, how much underground space can be provided? And of course, there are different possibilities. Either is for walking, or it can be used as a pedestrian walkway, or it can be used for other purposes. And also, in the process of leasing the land, if my understanding is correct, you have not specifically restricted the way the developer can use the underground when you calculated the plot ratio. But then my understanding is that that would not be calculated as to how deep they can dig underground. So the parameters would not involve whether they can dig underground. So for this pilot strategic study, will you be looking at the matter of principle? In other words, after this round of study, you would be looking at how the underground space can be used, if it's going to be used for commercial purposes or if it's to be leased to the stakeholders. Mr. Hon, all right, I'll answer the first question, and then for the second question, I'll defer to the planning department. Well, for the underground space, my understanding of Mr. Wu's question is that in terms of our thinking in developing these underground space, would we know as to how much of it can be used for pedestrians and how much of that can be used for commercial purposes? Well, it's still too early to say this because we haven't really completed the study, as I've been emphasizing that whether or not we're going to develop it for other purposes, we'll have to come back to this committee for approval. As to the connectivity to the MTR, we try to do it as far as possible so that we'll be able to ensure that both people and traffic can be connected. That's the guiding principle. And then for the second point, I'll defer to the planning department.
Assistant Director, the development constraints underground, I think each site has got its own restrictions in its lease, but usually we do not control the depth of an underground development, for instance, the number of basement levels. But if there is GFA, it will have to be counted. So usually developers will not choose to develop a basement. Can we be given relevant information on this? Because developers are so smart, they're able to find gray areas in your land grant. For instance, for festival walk, the developer was able to build such a big shopping mall using the gray areas in the lease. So can you tell us whether there will be any restrictions in the future lease under your policy so as to consider the benefits that a developer may gain in developing underground space? I think Mr. Wu wants the planning department to provide information on the following. When the government grants a site, maybe by lease or by planning parameters, and in drawing up OZPs, how does the planning department deal with underground space? I think Mr. Wu is asking for such information, and I believe you can provide it. And do you have any rough idea as to the amount of underground space that can be provided? Mr. Hon, I can give you some overseas experience. As I said, we conducted a duty visit to Paris, and I have to collect information on that and give you some supplementary information. Mr. Albert Chen. The government has got some basis for land planning and land use. Usually it has got a direction, but since Siwa Leung became CE, many studies came out of the blue. Last time, somebody, a certain Mr. Chen, might propose it, and due to the pressure or request of senior official may conduct studies that have never been considered in the past. For instance, reclamation in the central waters. It was also a proposal out of political considerations. I think for the underground space study here, I think it is to satisfy the need of IVS, individual visitor schemes travelers. We've asked the administration to do more in order to address the housing demand, but some privileged class would like to satisfy the demand of IVS, and it's a waste of time to conduct such studies. I am very angry about this, and I must condemn the cause of this study. I know many technocrats spent a lot of time working on this, but because some people who doesn't know planning at all have asked you to do this and that, and as a result, time of officials and the town planning board has been lost. Regarding developing underground space, I'm worried that it is another kind of transfer of benefits, because any change in planning would mean giving money to certain parties. For instance, the government conducted a comprehensive study of providing pedestrian walkways linking up Central, Wan Chai, and Causeway Bay. And at certain locations, pedestrian footbridges were added. And as we all know, after the construction of the mid-levels elevators or escalators, the properties on the two sides of the escalator have risen so much. And for this study, I think any place covered by that underground space development will see its value go up sharply. So there was no previous consideration, no internal discussion. Planning should start from the whole and to go down to different districts and different locations. And we should also look at the overall shortage of, say, commercial or retail space in Hong Kong. These are important considerations. For instance, if we are several square meters short of commercial space in Hong Kong, you establish that and look for supply in Hong Kong. You should not, out of the blue, pick these 4 areas and decide to develop underground space here. So I'm not convinced that the study should be done. There should be a territory-wide planning study first to consider the shortage of shopping and retail space. Perhaps it is better to have it at the boundary than in these 4 areas. So I'm strongly against this paper, Chairman. I'll give Mr. Horn an opportunity to reply if he so wishes. Yes, please continue. The mic was not on just now. Yes. I don't think I have any further replies. If members have no further questions, I'll now put this item to the vote. Will those who are in favor of the proposal raise their hand? I ask for a division. Mr. Albert Chan claims a division, and the division bell will ring for 5 minutes. Voting begins. Before I announce the results, members, please check your votes. Voting is closed. Please display the results. 16 yes, 2 no, 1 abstention. I declare the motion passed. We go on to the second item of our agenda. Head 711 paper PWSC 2014-1553 ATTI public transport interchange at Container Port Road and junction improvement works along Kwai Chung Road, Kwai Chung. This paper seeks to upgrade ATTI to Cat A at an estimated cost of $72.7 million in money of the day prices. The Housing Panel was consulted on the 3rd of November 2014, and the panel supported the proposal in general. For the main points of the discussion has been tabled. For this item, we have officials from the Transport and Housing Bureau, Highways Department, and Housing Department. Shall I invite the Chief Engineer from the Transport and Housing Bureau to walk us through the paper? Mr. Lo Kwok Hong, please. Yes, I would like to seek members' support to upgrade ATTI to Cat A. I will briefly introduce the scope to you. The purpose of the project is to relieve the traffic congestion near Kwai Fong MTR station and to increase the traffic capacity of the 2 junctions, and also to align with the PRH development at the PMQ, and it will provide 800 odd units. The project involves the construction of a PTI and also to carry improvement works at the junctions of Kwai Chung Road, Kwai Fuk Road, and Kwai Chung Road and Kwai Tik Road. On the 4th of November 2014, we consulted the Housing Panel with its support. The cost will be around $72.7 billion. We hope that members can support the project so that we can have funding to start works as soon as possible, so that we can provide the traffic infrastructure and PRH development. Mr. Yik. Thank you. We understand the great demand for housing from the community, but if the administration focuses on land for housing at the expense of land for our economy and business development, this is regrettable.
According to the container trade, all right, the 2 temporary car parks have been resumed by the administration. In fact, some 500 heavy vehicles can be parked in those 2 car parks. And in order to develop this project, near the Container Port Road in Kwai Chung, a PTI is to be installed there. And as far as we are aware, at present the site is used as a public temporary car park, and some 300 parking spaces can be made available, and 1/3 of that would be for heavy vehicles. And if the administration were to develop it without a replacement arrangement, then for heavy vehicles in Kwai Chung, the parking spaces will come down, and the parking fees will go up, and worse still, there might not be a space available for a vehicle. So have you got any replacement or alternative arrangement so that for the vehicles to be affected, how are they going to park? And also, well, if you were to develop the superstructure, you can also have PTI underground. So have you considered using the underground space so that you can still have a PTI instead of having to identify an alternative site for that? So Mr. Lo Kwok Kong, thank you for your question. Well, with regard to this particular item, near the Container Port Road, at present, indeed, is a public car park. And in considering this project, we have also talked to the contractor as to what can be done about it. And the consensus that have been reached is that as far as possible, the PTI will be as small as possible so that the impact can be minimized. So that's the consensus that we have reached, and that's the agreement between us and the contractor. With regard to whether we can further develop the space beneath the PTI, well, above the PTI, we have already got an elevated railway. If we were to develop that further, that would affect the day-to-day operation of the railway. And underneath, we also have a tunnel for the West Rail. That's why above the PTI and beneath the PTI, there is no chance that we can develop it further. But then what about the other questions raised by Mr. Frankie Yik? That is, well, for heavy vehicles, because of the project, they might not be able to find a space to park. And also, can these PTI be immersed underground? Because can it be underneath the public housing estate? So can you have the PTI underground? Thank you. Well, we have a public car park at the PTI for the parking of heavy vehicles, and for normal private cars and other vehicles, they can also be parked in that public car park. And according to our estimate, well, they'll be losing about 200 parking spaces as a result of that development. And in the district or nearby, there are many other public car parks available. So just opposite it, we have the multi-story car park of Kwai Fong, and the vacancy rate is quite high, and therefore for the parking spaces that have been lost, the heavy vehicles will be able to park in the other car parks. And in the multi-story car park, many heavy vehicles can be parked. And also in terms of the Kwai Chung Police Married Quarters, the site is very small, so there is no chance that we can accommodate a PTI underneath. But then in terms of the public housing estate or public rental housing development, we have already got 2 laybys for the picking up and dropping off of passengers there. Mr. Frankie Yik, thank you, Chairman, for clarifying the point for me. I hope that the administration can consider this. It's not just about this project, because during the past 6 months or so, some 500 parking spaces have been resumed, and now on top of that, you're going to recover another 300, so some 800 will be affected. And at present, the area is already very congested, affecting our container vessels, and many of them have already gone to Shenzhen. So before any new packages available, if you were to develop the area for housing purposes, then you would be losing sight of commercial development. Well, if there is some short-term tenancy site, if that's resumed for housing development, I think there will be close liaison amongst the parties and will be taking on board the views expressed before we make a decision. Next, Mr. Leung Chi Chung. Thank you, Chairman. Developing public housing is something that we cannot say no to, and is also an urgent need. And I'm not against having this PTI here, but then if you look at the location, apparently you don't have any alternative choice available. But then for the new site, if it's to be used by the public, then people will have to travel or walk a long distance from the public housing estate to the PTI. I also agree with what Mr. Yik just said. That is, if you were to resume the car park without a replacement, then I think that would be problematic. Well, beneath this site, can we have a PTI underground? And then above that, we can also have a multi-story car park that would also help address some demands. Yet apparently, after the completion of the PTI, nothing else can be developed here. So that would be a waste of the land. So I'd like to ask two questions here. So for the residents, after the public housing estate is completed, then the residents will have to walk through the entire Kwai Road before they can access the PTI. So what about the connectivity? Can it be better connected? So will there be pedestrian walkways? And also, why are you going to install only the PTI without any other developments to tie in with that? Or would that be a waste of the land here? Chief Civil Engineer. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. Well, in terms of the choice of the site, as I explained earlier, well, we hope that the PTI will be able to ease the congestion at the Kwai Fong PTI. That's why, in terms of the siting, we have chosen a site which is closest to the existing PTI near the MTR station. As to another consideration for this PTI, other than the fact that it's very close to the MTR station, it's also very close to the nearby industrial area. And also underground, we have a very comprehensive subway system. Opposite this site, there is a multi-story car park, and it's also very convenient to walk to the MTR station nearby. And it's also very close to the Kwai Chung Theatre. So there are 4 exits. And at the PTI, there is also pedestrian crossings to connect the pedestrians to the industrial buildings opposite. So in terms of dispersing the crowds and the passengers, I think it's a very convenient location. And in terms of the distance to be walked by the pedestrians, it's not very far away. As to whether or not it can be used for further developments, as I've explained earlier, well, above it we have the elevated flyover, and then underneath we also have tunnels. So if we were to have other developments here, that would affect the safety and the operability of the tunnel. So there would be adverse impact. Chairman, can I ask this? Yes, Mr. Leung. All right, from the new public housing estate, how long does it take to walk from the public housing estate to this PTI? Can I ask the chief architect from the housing department? So can you answer the question raised by Mr. Leung from the perspective of developing the public housing estates? Because he's concerned that in future, well, the residents from the public housing estate would have to pass through Kwai Road before they can access the PTI, and it might not be very easy for the residents to cross the road at Kwai Road. Is that right, Mr. Leung? Yes. So does the housing department have an answer for that concerning the new public housing estates residents? So from their perspective, how do they cross Kwai Road? Yes, Chairman. Thank you, member, for your question. Concerning the new PTI, well, the distance of the new PTI with the public housing estate is 230 meters. And if you have to walk the 230 meters, it will take about 10 odd minutes. So it should be an appropriate location for our residents to use. Mr. Leung, would you like to follow up? Well, Chairman, on that side of the road, the road sections are pretty busy. And also there are many container trucks using that section. So will you consider putting in place more pedestrian crossings there? Would that be safer? Well, Ms. Tam, so there is so that there is no reason why you should have the residents scrambling for the road space with the traffic. You should not be asking them to cross the road at grade, right? Would there be pedestrian crossings there? Chairman, in fact, our colleague from the Transport Department would be able to answer the question. Yes, Chief Transport Officer from the Transport Department, Mr. Poon. Yes, under our proposal, if you look at the PTI, is to ease the traffic at Kwai Road and Kwai Fu Road, because at present the traffic is very congested there, including in the morning and afternoon peak hours. We have a lot of staff coach buses using those roads. So for the staff or employee coach buses, there are about 50 routes. And they would be connected to the nearby industrial areas, for example, Container Port Road, and also the nearby roads. And therefore, the purpose of having this PTI is to ease the traffic there, so that the staff of the coach buses will be able to make use of the PTI for embarking and disembarking, so that they do not have to use the nearby roads, and that would also ease the traffic congestion nearby. And also for the newly completed public PRH estate, the additional traffic generated would also not cause additional congestion. And therefore, if you go to the Kwai Fong MTR station, there would be an underground walkway. So it's about 230 meters away. And to give you an idea as to how far that would be, well, what's the distance between bus stops right now? So it's about 300 to 400 meters. So it would be less than the distance of a bus stop. So there is no need for them to cross the road at grade, right? No need. According to what you said, there is no need for them to cross the road at grade. No, they will have to cross the road at grade. There is a pedestrian subway, because they will have to go past the Container Port Road and also Kwai Chung Road. So there is a roundabout there. But my question is, so residents do not have to cross the road at grade, correct? Because just now I heard that you said that there would be a pedestrian subway. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. If you look at these plans very often, well, you have to resume a car park, and then heavy vehicles will be affected. But then if you look at the entire traffic planning process, well, for heavy vehicles, the demand for parking is not included in the HKPSG, and therefore every time whenever we have this project, we would be assured that you don't have to worry about this, because there are 2 STT sites available, and therefore that would also help address the problem of parking. But then that's not going to work, because in this district we have faced similar problems. Whenever there are developments, you'll be resuming the car parks for heavy vehicles.
So my question for the planning department is, will you include in your planning standards the provision of car parks for heavy-duty vehicles, unless you believe that in the long term there will not be any demand for parking spaces for heavy vehicles? Otherwise, you will still face the problem of where they can park. So can we have planning standards for parking spaces for heavy-duty vehicles, please? Anyone? Planning department? This is about planning. Mr. Chow? We've said in a previous panel meeting that our Hong Kong planning standards and guideline is an overall document covering different aspects. If the transport department believes that there is the need to include the standards for heavy-duty parking vehicle parking spaces in the guidelines, they can tell us. Do we have any provision for that? Well, when we consider the demand for parking spaces in a particular district, it depends on the types of vehicles we are talking about. In Kwai Chung, there are many STT sites. If there is a great demand for heavy-duty vehicles, then in granting STTs, we can ask for a certain percentage of the spaces be reserved for heavy vehicles. This will address the demand for parking spaces in the district. So my question is, does the Transport Department think that it's not necessary to include any guidelines or standards in this regard in the planning standards and guidelines? Transport Department. Standards for heavy vehicle parking space, it depends on the land use. In a residential area, we don't need any standards for heavy vehicle parking spaces. And in an industrial area, we will specify the number of such places for heavy vehicles in residential developments and other developments. So it depends on the need of the local community. So Mr. Chow, can you please assist? I think Mr. Wu is asking the following question. In your OZP, you do have requirements on the provision of parking spaces, and they're concerned as to whether for heavy-duty vehicles you have similar requirements in your OZP or planning parameters. Let me go back to the arrangement in the system. It has to come from the Transport and Housing Bureau. Perhaps the Transport Department should bring this back and discuss with this bureau. So Mr. Wu's question is already answered, and Mr. Frankie Yik may want to follow up. So the TH Bureau should take the lead before such standards can be reflected in OZPs. Mr. Albert Chen, 2 comments. Regarding Mr. Frankie Yik's question, the government must not overlook it, because the government operates in a fragmented manner. There is no coordination on the overall demand. For instance, STTs may be recovered, and there is no assessment of the impacts on other industries. In fact, that can cause serious impacts on different industries. The impacts should be considered from a planning perspective. The paper is silent on this. This reflects that government departments, government papers are more and more simple, so that the less mentioned, the less responsibility involved. So I hope such issues should be considered right from the beginning in planning. As regards how Mr. Yik's question can be addressed, I hope we can have a paper before the FC meeting. How can you help heavy vehicles in Kwai Chung to have parking spaces? It's not easy to identify enough space for hundreds of heavy vehicles, because if you do not resolve this problem, illegal parking will worsen in this district. And the dumping of materials at landfill, according to the paper, 115 tons will be dumped at our landfills. I think this is a waste and also irrational. If the government has long-term planning, it should plan for reclamation to use construction waste, so that we don't have to borrow sand in the future when we have reclamation. I've said this for more than a decade, and every time I come across such papers, I repeat the same issue. I think we are just pouring money into down the drains. because if we dump the construction waste into our landfills, it will affect the nearby residential developments. This practice reflects a lack of coordination among government departments. Bureaus or departments will only look after their own business, and for other departments' business, there's none of their matter. I don't think this is a question that can be answered by the chief engineer. I'd like to know whether the two PSs would like to answer Ms. Albert Chen's question, just for the sake of our record. Mr. Y. Para 19 of the paper has made it very clear that for construction waste that can be used for public field, they will be transported to our public field reception facilities. But 3% of non-inert construction waste will be dumped at landfills. I said very clearly that it's 115 tons, 3% non-inert construction waste that cannot be used for reclamation. Mr. Yik. We've asked the same question as Mr. Wu Jiwei did on other occasions. The government has no formal provision, a policy on the provision of parking spaces for heavy vehicles. I think it is carrying a study as to whether multi-story car parks can be provided for heavy vehicles. But pending that, you are using STTs. Now for Kowloon East, Kai Tak, about 1,000 parking spaces have been resumed, and 600 of them are for coaches. So I don't know where they are going to park. On the roadside, this is a serious problem. And according to administration, there should be enough space in Kwai Chung to absorb the demand from the loss of 100 odd parking spaces. I'd like to have a paper on the current utilization rate of parking spaces available in Kwai Chung to see whether there is indeed spare capacity to absorb these 800 extra demand. And we're told that the site is very small. It is difficult to add the PTI. But if we can look at the enclosure one, the proposed site for PRH is not really small compared with the proposed PTI. I don't understand why you need to provide parking spaces for coaches. If you do not have a proposed bay for coaches, then the size required will be smaller. So theoretically speaking, you can house this PTI underground, or not really underground, at grade. In Hong Kong or in Kowloon East, we see many PTIs placed just beneath residential developments. Chief Engineer. First, we've discussed with the operator of the car park. Well, it's useless to discuss with the operator. You talk about the manager of the car park. No, I'm talking about my constituency, the transport sector. The demand for parking spaces generated by the container terminal will discuss with the Transport Department and provide supplementary information. Regarding providing a PTI underneath the PRH development, well, a PTI requires space to house buses and coaches, and these vehicles are very long, up to 12 meters. They need more room for a turnaround. And then at Kwai Chung Road, we can't provide an access for buses and coaches. And within the PRH site, we have got base for GMBs, etc. I think Mr. Yik asked, why do you have to reserve a bay for coaches? I'll say a few words, and if you need detailed information, the Transport Department can supplement. This is because near the current PTI, there are many service coaches for employees in the morning and also in the afternoon. And therefore, in this PTI, we propose a bay for coaches, but these are not really for coaches for visitors, but for it's a shuttle for employees. Ms. Alice Mack. The chief civil engineer asked why should there be a bay for coaches. Is mainly coaches for is actually shuttle service for employees, because if you put a GMB bus stop here, I don't think people will walk there. But if there is a bay for coaches, then employees or workers are forced to walk there and use the area for embarking and disembarking. The area has been always congested. Now, since PRH development is planned, of course we want the traffic issues to be resolved. But how useful it is in resolving traffic congestion around Kwai Fong MTR station, near Kwai Chung MTR station, we've got GMBs from Tsingyi. Now people can just alight outside the MTR station. Well, the stops be moved far away. You say that there are subways, but people don't like the subways. Will you move the stops far away from the station, causing inconvenience to passengers? Of course, we understand that nearby there is no space available, and there is the only site available to entertain this wish. Still, is it useful and practical? Will it cause inconvenience to other users as a result? So you should consider how you can attract people to the PTI. You should not provide bus stops or GMB stops at a very remote area. You can use that PTI for other purposes so that you can attract users. Mr. Low, thank you, Ms. Mack, for your suggestion.
On the siting, as I've explained just now, and also the use of it, well, the purpose is to ease the traffic congestion at the nearby PTI. That's why we have to build it near those facilities so that the buses and so on can be diverted to the new PTI, and that would help ease the present traffic congestion. As to whether or not we can have more facilities there, or whether or not it's too remotely located, in fact, we have looked at the nearby area. There are many small shops available, as we have staff coach buses, and they would take up quite a substantial amount of use there. That's why nearby there is also an industrial area. That's why near the PTI there would be at grade pedestrian crossings, so that pedestrians will be able to gain access to the nearby industrial buildings, as to the MTR station and also the Kwai Chung Theatre. And also, these would be connected by pedestrian subways, and it's not very far away. It's just 200 meters away. So it's really within walking distance. Yes, Ms. Alice Mack. Well, as some colleagues have asked about the parking by heavy vehicles. In fact, this is exactly the site where they used to park in the 80s. There was a study on the construction of a multi-story heavy vehicle car park. Well, that was not implemented, and that's why just now some officials said that there would be alternative parking spaces available in the area for the heavy vehicles. I do have skepticism about that. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. Well, according to the officials, you said that the pedestrian flows of the PTI and also the connectivity with the nearby facilities will have to rely on the pedestrian subway system. But then if you look at what the member from the constituency has said, in fact, most residents would not be using the subway system to access the bus stop. Most of them would be using the at-grade crossings. So if we want to encourage people to use that, you will have to provide a very direct route for them. For instance, if you look at the alignment of the MTR station, if it can be connected directly to the Kwai Fong station of the MTR system, then that would attract the attractiveness of the subway, so that after that's been completed, then you will have every justification for diverting the GMB near the Kwai Fong station. Or else, if you try to change the arrangement, then many residents will complain that originally that would provide a very direct access to the MTR station, but now you are making me walk a number of subways before I can access the MTR station. So can you consider that, so that the PTI can provide a direct access, so that there would be a direct footbridge link with the MTR station? Yes, Chief Engineer. At present, there is no footbridge connecting the PTI with the MTR station. But then Mr. Wu was asking whether or not you would consider it. Well, at present, there is already a subway system connecting with different areas, and there are already 4 exits. Yes, Chairman, I understand that. Yes, it's a very comprehensive link. But then, it's about the pedestrians' views about the subway system, because at present from the PTI location, if you for the employees taking the shuttle bus, they will have to embark and disembark here, and as Ms. Alice Mack just said, in the long run, well, there are many GMB routes which congregate outside the Kwai Fong MTR station, and if you want to move them away from the location, and if you force people to walk the subway system, that's not going to be attractive, and there would also be a lot of criticisms. So while you're undertaking this PTI construction, so why don't you also construct a direct footbridge linking with the MTR station? That would make it more popular, and in the long run, when you try to change the GMB stops, that would also be easier. So have you considered that in the long run, with regard to the realignment of the GMB, would that be acceptable to the residents? Transport Department, Mr. Poon, would you like to answer the question? Yes, thank you, Mr. Wu, for your question. As you just said, for the PTI, well, for the staff shuttle bus, because they are using large buses mostly, so when they have to wait for the passengers to embark, the waiting time would be somewhat longer. And right now, they are parked near Kwai Road, and we think that's not very appropriate. That's why we hope that for these large vehicles and also the buses with high carrying capacity, would like to divert them to the PTI. Well, we have no qualms about that at all. So for the time being, we have no plans of relocating the GMB outside the Kwai Fong MTR station to this PTI, because the characteristics of the GMB would be that, well, they move around very quickly. That's why they are not really causing a lot of congestion in the area. When compared to these shuttle buses, in fact, the shuttle buses are causing more congestion in the area. That's why we do not have any immediate plans to relocate the GMB stops into the PTI. So the PTI will be serving a very narrow function. So you're building this major PTI, and yet it would only be used for very limited purposes. Would that be an overkill? Yes, Chief Engineer. other than the employee shuttle buses that can use this PTI, there would also be bus stops and also GMB stops. So that's to ease the present congestion at the MTR PTI. Chairman, yes, Mr. Wu. Well, can I ask one more question? Yes, please. All right, to build a PTI, we would have to think about the overall layout. Well, for the situation outside the Kwai Fong MTR station, as we can all see, because there are many arrangements for people to make use of different forms or modes of traffic. So while you're building this PTI, if you do not have a direct link to bring the passengers to the MTR station, then that would be a waste of the project. So that's what I'd like to point out. Okay, Chief Engineer, will you consider Mr. Wu's suggestion? So you will have to go to the FC again. So will you be prepared to consider that? Yes, point taken. In building this PTI, providing a direct pedestrian link is a very good suggestion. And we have actually considered that. That's why in choosing the site, well, we have also looked at how the pedestrians can be dispersed. So that has been considered already. That's why we already have at grade pedestrian crossing, but then Kwai Fong Road is a very busy road already. That's why, given the fact that we have already got a very good subway system, that's why we try to make use of the existing subway system. And there is no plan to build this footbridge. Okay, Chairman, can I ask the department to provide further information as to the proposal for building this footbridge? So can you provide us with further information? And also for Kwai Fong Road and Kwai Yi Road, you talk about the subway system. In fact, what about the distance of walk and also the exit network? So can you provide us with further information so that we can have a better understanding? So please provide the information requested. And if you would like to, well, all right, let's say if you come out from the Kwai Fong MTR station, where can you enter the subway system and where can you come out? So that members can have a better understanding of this. Now, Mr. Leung Yu Chong, you know the place very well. It's your turn now. Well, for the PTI, the emergence of this PTI, that's because, well, at the XKCMQ, you're going to build a public housing estate. And as we know, as a result of that, the traffic in the area will be even more congested. And also in terms of road use, that would pose a big problem. That's why residents have objected to the proposed PRH development. But then the administration insists on doing this. That's why you're going to build this PTI in order to ease the traffic congestion nearby. But then, if you ask me, I don't think there is a high chance that this PTI will be able to serve the purpose. All right, if you go to the, well, that would only serve the people going to the container terminal. But then, if you look at the traffic congestion in the Kwai Chung area, I don't think it would be of much help. In fact, as we all know, well, in the area near the XKCMQ, the traffic congestion is very serious. And with this PTI, it's not going to solve the problem of congestion. But then, despite all that, from what I've heard from the administration, apparently they are thinking that the pedestrian subway system will help solve the problem. Well, it's not a bad idea. But then, for people going to the industrial area, I don't think that you are going to provide a very comprehensive link. I suggested before that you should have a footbridge system connecting with the industrial area, and if that can provide a direct access to the MTR station, that would help improve the road use. But well, they said that they had not considered this when they answered the question raised by Mr. Wu Chi-wai, and I find that disappointing. But then, given the current development, my question for the administration is, you propose to build this PTI here. But then coming back to the Kwai Fong MTR station, well, to what extent do you think you'll be able to ease the traffic congestion there? It's not just about traffic congestion. To what extent will you be able to divert the pedestrians from the MTR station? Yes, Chief Engineer. Thank you. Other than building this new PTI along Kwai Chung Road, at 2 sections, we will be carrying out improvement works at Kwai Fu Road and Kwai Yik Road. So at these 2 junctions, we're going to carry out improvement works so that in future the traffic flow can increase. As to the footbridge network connecting with different parts of the district, and also the extent that it could ease the traffic congestion outside the MTR station, I'll defer to the Transport Department. Yes, Mr. Poon. Now coming back to this PTI, we just said that we'd like to ease the traffic congestion near Kwai Yi Road, because there are many employee shuttle buses using that section, and buses do not have to turn into this area. And in our, well, every morning there will be about 20-30 buses which can be placed here. And also in response to what Mr. Wu just said, in the future will there be further room for the other PTIs and vehicles to go in? Yes, we are prepared to keep an eye on that. But then, before we can move the GMB into this PTI, we will have to conduct local consultation. Mr. Lang Yu-chong, what I'm most concerned about is that, well, at the public housing estate, there will be minibus stops, right? So what I'm concerned about is, well, if you're going to introduce minibuses into the area, then they'll be circulating in the MTR station. The roads are already very narrow, so how can you ease the traffic there? Transport Department or the Chief Engineer, who is to answer the question? Yes, Chief Engineer. Will you be able to answer the question? Well, in building this PTI, and also to have this minibus stop, that's because the present public transport system near the MTR station is, well, there are many such uses. That's why we try to divert some of these GMB routes and also the shuttle buses from the area near the MTR station. But you have not answered the question. You'll be increasing the number of minibus routes, and there'll be more people using the services. The roads are already very narrow. It's already very congested. As we all know, Kwai Fong MTR station is very busy.
Particular at peak hours. Mr. Leung, he said the pedestrians would use the subways. But how are these GMB routes going to address traffic congestion? With more vehicles there will be further traffic congestion. Oh, you talk about traffic jam, not dispersal of pedestrians. They use subways to do that. All right, I'll give the TD one more chance to answer Mr. Leung's question. Thank you. Let's consider the situation, rely on the curbside of Kwai Yu Road for drop-off and alighting arrangements. After the new PTI, there will be off the road dropping and alighting places. So we have taken those stops away from Kwai Yu Road. And there will be more facilities, but without adding traffic jam. But of course, traffic to be generated by the future PRH development is a separate issue. For vehicles along Kwai Yu Road, there will be no addition to the number of vehicles, but there are more facilities for lighting and unlighting. So we believe traffic along Kwai Chung Road will be smoother than it is now. If members have no further questions, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, beg your pardon. Sorry, I was too slow to press the button. When we worked on redevelopment of Kwun Tong Town Centre, the greatest issue was to take advantage of that major development to address traffic congestion caused by roadside lighting and unlighting activities. So it was decided such activities should be moved into a PTI. Now, you are going to build a PTI here, and according to the Transport Department, you are not going to use it as a means to relieve traffic congestion. And according to a traffic impact assessment, the traffic impacts of the PRH development cannot be addressed or resolved easily. And as you are saying that the situation in Kwai Fong is already desirable and you have spare capacity to address new problems. Otherwise, you should take this opportunity to see how you can plan better. And in Kwun Tong, we know for sure that subways are not attractive as pedestrian footbridges to pedestrians. And eventually, you'll find people asking the GMB buses to stop at MTR stations instead of somewhere far away. You may think that subways will be able to change the walking pattern of pedestrians. You will eventually find that people don't like subways, and the utilization will be lower than you expect now. So please, can you tell us, before the paper goes to FC, that you are going to provide a pedestrian footbridge to lead directly to the MTR station? This question has been asked a number of times, and you see members are going to press on this. Mr. Low, how are you going to address this issue? Regarding pedestrian footbridges, now I'd like to say that since there are already subways available, there is no need to develop more subways. And in enclosure 1, you can see that nearby there is already a viaduct. And then next to Kwai Chung Road, there is a multi-story car park of Kwai Fong. So will there be space for providing footbridges? You can see that the area is already very crowded. Footbridges would mean ramps, staircases, and lifts, and more space is needed. At this site, it's hard to find space to accommodate extra facilities. And if staircases, ramps are to be added at the PTI, that would mean a bigger space is needed. And there are subways underground, and above there is already a pedestrian footbridge by the MTR. If we need a bigger space, then we need to resume even more land from the temporary car park. Dr. Kwokaki, I didn't want to press the government further. I have no objection to this paper, but if people are required to walk for so long, I think you should know that most vehicles are parked just outside the MTR station, or public buses are like passengers there. And if pedestrians are required to walk a long way, it is not convenient. Whether it is costly or not, we have no strong objection to this PTI, but if eventually people choose not to use this PTI and want to stop just outside the MTR station, what's the point of having this PTI? You must have enough incentive to make it convenient for passengers or pedestrians to use it. Currently, they enjoy convenience, but in the future, your PTI is inconvenient. It may be underutilized. That means it's a waste of money. Chief Engineer. As I said, we hope that the proposed PTI can help to ease the very busy PTI and pedestrian facilities near the MTR station. When the PTI is almost completed, there will be a diversion of public buses and reorganization of routes, but that will be done when it's nearer the time. We'll also consult the community. I don't think he understands my question. Of course, you will divert some buses away, but the question is whether you have enough supporting facilities. Yes, you can force these buses away, I know, but the future PTI is not convenient. And members are asking what you can do to ensure that the PTI can be convenient to use. For instance, Mr. Wu Jiwai asked for the use of footbridges and other means. So have you considered adding such facilities before this paper goes to FC? Chief Engineer. No, we're not penalizing users. We want to do something to relieve the traffic congestion here. All right, a few legislators of the Kwai Chung district and even district councillors of Kwai Chung here are telling you that from users' point of view, people would not just get off at the new PTI. They will still ask GMBs or buses to drop them off at the MTR station. Have you considered this possibility? A few members have asked this question a number of times. TD? First, on the location. Sites available in the vicinity are limited, and our objective is not to affect the size and the location of current car parks. Given the constraints, we have to put up with this location and this size. Members asked whether people will be willing to use this PTI upon completion. Well, we can divert traffic coming from the south, that is from the container terminal or from Ting E Bridge to. Now, if they go into this PTI, they don't want to get stuck in the traffic jam of Kwai Road. As pointed out by members, Kwai Road is very congested now. I think given the choice, the vehicles would welcome this new PTI. Of course, members asked whether the subways will be very dirty and people would rather not use it. We will discuss with the Highways Department to see how the subways can be kept, can be maintained at a minimum standard, so people will not refuse to use it. But what if these measures are unsuccessful? What you promise is just an empty undertaking. What if after the PTA is built, people don't like it? I think the conclusion assessment by the government is clearly different from the assessment of some members here. So they have the planning data. We either oppose their motion on the basis of this, otherwise it's useless to continue this argument. Unless members think that it is meaningful to ask further questions, I put this item to the vote. Will those in favor of the paper raise their hands, please? Those against the motion, please raise their hands. I believe the majority of members voting on this item support the paper, so the motion is passed. Okay, we have a supplementary information paper on parking spaces for heavy vehicles. It's now 10:27 according to the clock here. Let's not start a new item. All right, so the papers passed today are expected to go to FC on the 8th of May 2015. We've passed two. Any requests for separate voting for any of the items? No? All right. Date of next meeting, the 18th of March, Wednesday at 8:30. Thank you.